The tech.
So, Qain has arrived.
I have not.
So he's not arrived.
I am just a pigment of your imagination.
A pigment?
Yes.
What shade? Off-white.
Blue?
Blue, like from Disney?
Yes.
Like
the bear.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a charcoal.
I drove across the country in my bare feet. It's all good.
But just the bare necessities.
It did, actually. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mother Nature's recipes. And now you're forgetting about your worries and your strife.
Yeah.
Excellent. Let's get down to business. Wendell, how you doing in
Can we
Kentucky?
kill it with the puns? It's unbearable.
Oh, no. I think you just derailed the Qain train. Guys, we got some pretty big announcements. LAN Syndicate, April 15th, Seattle, Magnuson Park. These are all things you need to know.
Be there.
So it's the 15th, which is a Friday through Sunday, and we've got the entire weekend. We're going to be there 24 hours a day. Now, here's the deal. You guys can get tickets right now. You just go over to epicpants.com. You can buy the tickets. Now, the tickets are $75 for the first come people. Like, we're having a very limited run. So the first people that can get it, if you guys get it before the end of the year, it's $75. If you get it after the beginning of the year, it goes up to the normal price. But if you guys go ahead and get it now, it's incentive, right? That's how they do it. Anyway, it's going to be freaking awesome. We've got some tournaments that we're going to have. Let us know what you want as well, because we're still we're still planning different things. But one of the things we are going to have is have a few food trucks. There's going to be a beer vendor there. And the way we're separating this is that when you guys go and buy your tickets, there'll be a form that you fill out. Let us know if you're over 21 and wish to drink beer while you play your games. If you do, we have a separate section for drinking. It's 21 and over, of course.
That's done that way legally.
Yeah. So you can either set in the 21 and over, drink some beer section. Even if you don't want to, drink beer, but you want to be in the 21 and over section with a lot of your friends who are going to be drinking beer and you're over 21, go ahead and check mark that, so we'll put you in that section. We need to know how big to make that section, essentially, because we have to put a little fence around it. So when we are doing our floor plan, we need to know all that stuff. All the seating arrangements and that sort of thing will be handled soon, but go ahead and get your tickets now, and then we'll figure out if you guys want to all get together. We'll figure it out for you guys. It's not going to, the first one's going to be, this is our first LAN party, so it should be pretty smooth, because we think we know what we're doing. But there'll be a few things to iron out along the way. The bottom line is it's going to be an insane amount of fun. And I couldn't believe that Seattle didn't have a LAN party, so now they do.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I came all the way over here for this.
Yeah. And we'll see you guys there. Go ahead and get we also have a couple hotel vouchers and discounts that we'll be giving you guys soon. So know that we're taking care of all that. We're also going to get some shuttle service, just everything. We're making sure that you guys are taken care of. So you guys get here, and we'll take care of the rest, So enjoy that. Really fast internet has been cropping up in surprising places. Places where Comcast doesn't sign 30-year contracts with the local government. I wonder where they've done that. I don't even have any. Seattle.
I almost wish I drove through here on my way over this direction, actually.
Yeah, okay, there's nothing in Detroit right now, and Detroit's kind of a mess. It's kind of like what Fallout. They were like, we could base this on Detroit, except Detroit would just be the same as it already is. So that's not very interesting. But soon they're going to have 10 gig internet for around $300 a month. You can get gig for $70 a month. And one of the articles I was reading, this is just on Rocket Fiber, who's going to be bringing this to Detroit. One of the articles I was reading was like, it's a little steep at $70 a month. I want to find that guy and strangle him.
Okay, I just want to give you perspective.
A little
here.
Steep. Comcast is like $140 for 100 megs around that.
Yeah, well, the the backbone provider I had in my office in New York, we were paying $700 a month for a 100 meg connection.
Bidirectional.
100 megs. It's like 100 meg Ethernet plugged right into our network.
Yep.
$700 a month.
And Wendell, you're paying a lot more than that for a bidirectional 100 down there. So I mean,
Yes.
you need this 10
we've
gig.
upgraded to 250 by 250, but it's still ludicrously expensive.
I mean, for 10 gig, it's ridiculously cheap. So,
Except you have to live in Detroit.
well, that's the thing. If they're going to put this in Detroit, all of the tech people from anywhere near Detroit, all the people just wherever, they're going to be going straight there because number one, it's insanely cheap. They can buy a warehouse for the price that you can buy a studio apartment in New York City. You can buy like a 50,000 square foot warehouse. You can buy a whole neighborhood of houses. So, okay, all the all the younger people who want to get into the programming and stuff are going to move there. Other people are going to start moving there and they're going to set up restaurants and stuff. People who don't know how to program, they're going to be like, oh, these guys want something to do. Let's go start a whiskey bar. Let's go start a barcade. That's going to blow up.
I actually saw a few articles directly about Detroit recently where they've started to reinvest some cash into repairing some of their old structures. Like the rail station in downtown Detroit is like falling apart. Lots of the windows are busted out. They've boarded it up. Or they've cordoned it off. And they're actually doing some repairs. So maybe we'll see some tax incentives from Michigan to move companies back into Detroit. I mean, in all reality, what has Detroit really had over the course of the last 80 years that's been consistent? And it's not doing so hot last I checked.
Yeah, this could be bigger than the automobile industry.
Just saying.
This, in before haters, there is one aspect of this that we should mention, which is these are residential connections. And so residential connections are historically very, very oversold. Residential connections and commercial connections are apples and oranges, at least in the way that they're set up in the United States. And so even though it's a 10 gig connection, you couldn't get a 10 gig connection for the same money in the commercial space because commercial connections are not, at the very least, the commercial connections are not as oversold as the residential connections. Be that as it may, in a major data center for a 100 megabit port, you're not going to pay any more than $150, $200 a month for the port. Most of your monthly cost is your infrastructure costs to actually carry that port's traffic from your provider to your local connection. I don't have really good coverage if any of you guys work at level 3 and want to share the confidential pricing because that's kind of guarded. And you want to let us know what the pricing is, let us know. But the data that I have, which admittedly is sketchy, is that a 40 gig port in that same data center is only going to run you, $15,000-$20,000 a month, maybe not even that, for a 40 gigabit connection. And that's something that you're basically assuming that it's a 24/7, 100% usage in a commercial scenario. Now, you're going to have some infrastructure costs in carrying that port out of the data center and somewhere else, connectivity, level 3, whatever. But, a 100 meg connection, residential, there's plenty of room to make a ton of profit. I mean, look at Time Warner's profit margins. It's over 90%. And that's including your infrastructure costs in terms of delivering data. Because a lot of the data doesn't actually even leave their network because of the caching and this, that, and the other. That's one of the reasons why the YouTube experience is really bad on YouTube is because their caching server is overloaded.
I read somewhere, it's sort of just a rumor, I don't know, but they said that they were going to make up to 100 gigabit connections available for commercial purposes, up to. And they, it's going to be on a quote basis. They'll tell you how much it's going to be, but if it's going to be that much per month, I mean, maybe you could. 100 gig, you could run a freaking server farm if you wanted to. But
the last time I priced out data connectivity at a data center level, you'd pay for the port, and the port price is relatively inexpensive. I know you said like what was it, like $20,000 you said a month for like a gigabit connection.
40 gig.
40 gig for the port, it's going to be a fraction of that cost. But what you're really paying on is how much data you're using. And you have a minimum data, and they charge it on what they call the 95th percentile. So 95% of the time you are delivering X amount of data through this cable, and you're going to pay an allotment on on what your 95th percentile is. So if you've got a 40 gig connection, you're paying maybe $2,000 for the actual port, but you're only using 10 gigs out of that port constantly a month, but your agreement says that you're going to be using a bare minimum of 20 gigs, you're paying for a 95th percentile of 20 gigs a month, which is charged at whatever
That's dramatically
pricing.
way lower than $20,000.
Yeah, and so you're paying almost. You're not paying for bandwidth. You're paying for saturation or an estimated, how much you're going to be saturating it.
You're paying. Well, this is where it gets really interesting when you look at consumer versus this kind of enterprise stuff. Is your consumer grade? We pay for a 100 meg connection, and we're saying, hey, you get unlimited data throughput for 100 megs. In the enterprise grade level, you get this gigabit port. But then depending on your service provider and depending on how much what grade of and how much you're expecting to throw around in that, you'll be paying on a 95th percentile. So you're actually paying on the throughput, how much data you're running. But it's not like a running counter of this month you put 300 million gigs through here. It's on any given time period, any given slot time period, 95% of the time. Based on a month of service, you used X amount at any given moment. It's I could throw the math up there, but it's a little ridiculous. But
yeah, that's
what they charge on.
Back around to Detroit. I'm going to make a prediction. In the next 5 years, you're going to see a totally different Detroit. Just look at Chattanooga. That's a good example. But I think Detroit may, I don't know, maybe even more so because it's already got kind of this rough. Do-it-yourself sort of vibe going on there because of all the stuff that happened. Now everyone's just like, we're here, we're doing it ourselves.
And it's also because it's Detroit. I mean, like you said, it looks kind of like a war zone right now. So a lot of the real estate is dirt cheap. But part of the reason that real estate is dirt cheap is because of the environment that it's in. The other thing I want to point out with this Rocket Internet from Detroit is that this is, if I read this correctly, this is a community. Local business that got together. They got support from the local communities. They threw a bunch of cash into this, and they laid kilometers of fiber optics for this service.
Pretty awesome. All right, we'll keep an eye on that as it develops, but keep in mind those predictions that I made. No one else made them, but I made them. So maybe we agree. All right, let's take a look at what's going on in Paris. First off, this is the least of their worries in Paris. Guys, don't be afraid. I've been seeing a lot of stuff that's going on in Paris right now, and I really want to commend everyone who's out taking to the streets, holding up signs that say we are not afraid.
And so, it's been a very... I was actually reading this article here when I got the word of what was happening earlier.
Mm-hmm. If you guys don't know what we're talking about the explosions that went off at the indie rock concert, and then the shootings and just all the madness that's going on in Paris right now. You guys are dealing with some cowards over there, and I'm sorry for that. And that's beyond the scope of this show, really. But, our heart's out and all that kind of stuff. So, anyway, I want to talk about what's going on in the airport because it's a bit funny. Planes have been grounded at Orly and also in Lyon because of a Windows 3.1 system error. And there's a system there, I believe it's called the Decor. That's what it is, the Decor. And the system it links the air traffic control systems with some of their other systems, and it's really important for taking off in bad conditions like, fog or rain or whatever. Anyway, the system went down, and they're like, well, it's running Windows 3.1. So Windows 3.1 was in 1992. And then they stopped support for this in, 2001? Yep, 2001. And they've still been using it.
This is... I'm going to go out on a limb and wager a guess that this has a lot to do with the same kind of things that we saw when we were at CERN, in that there is pieces of hardware that were probably in use, big relay systems or PLCs, things that were put in use way back when that work, and they work really well with the infrastructure that they have there. And in order to modernize it or replace it, they have to rip out all of that equipment and then lay new equipment down.
Yeah, we saw some Windows 95 machines, and we're like, why are you running Windows 95 at CERN? And the guy was like, well, we have Linux on everything else, but they don't make drivers for Linux, and they didn't actually make drivers for Windows XP, so this is all we've got.
Or for Windows 7. Most of this, they've got two systems that were running one system was running Windows 7, a lot of systems were running Linux, so anything that was doing the data collection was Linux. But these pieces of equipment that were controlling the equipment like the big it was a programmable logic controller that was being used on that old system, and it was being used because the drivers for that piece of equipment, the company never made drivers
probably
for new
some
stuff.
old hardware that they just
And it's stuff that it's not that it's bad or it's old and it doesn't work. It works great. They came out with a new version of the system. They came out with a new version of the PLC, and instead of updating drivers for the old equipment, they just said buy the new stuff. But I'm like, but that's like a $50,000 purchase plus all of the rewiring and everything else, and it's not.
I mean, if it's not broke, maybe that's their idea. But they're going to have to upgrade it. Mainly, I think that I'm not sure if they would have upgraded if it didn't become such a big issue. Like now they've committed to upgrading this by 2017.
And people are like, what? That's only. It's only a year and a half away, but that's how long it's going to take to rewire a lot of this stuff. Because what they're talking about, this was the decor system. It links all your air traffic control systems in the towers to the sensors on the runway. So the planes themselves, who are communicating with the tower, can know how much runway is left in the event that there is whiteout conditions and fog and whatnot. So it's a pretty specialized piece of equipment.
Yeah.
So unless you want to write drivers for Windows 7, they can just swap them out.
Oh no, things have started to autoplay. I can't stand this.
It'll do it again here in 5 minutes.
IB Times, your website, I hate it. Why are we using this?
I don't know.
I would have find this somewhere else. Anywhere. Let's talk about the Matrix for just a little bit.
It's kind of a neat. It's kind of funny because we went to I was just watching the last of the third one the other day. It was kind of amusing.
They're playing it at a bar.
Yeah.
If anyone out there, I want to get some hate right now. I did not like the Matrix movie. I didn't like 1 or 2 or 3. I hated 2 and 3. Hated them.
A lot of people did.
Well, that's
I thought
understandable.
I thought that the plot was very interesting. The characters are, what's the word? Wooden? Is that the right word for that? They're just like bleh. There's no character in those movies. I like characters that, I don't know. I'd rather read the plot synopsis and be done with it. I was like, it's a good, interesting plot.
There was a lot of
synopsis.
really good visualizations in those movies. The second and third one,
just give me a William Gibson book and a pot of tea, and I'll be fine. Anyway,
absolutely.
These guys are going to make the Matrix happen.
Sort of.
Virtual reality startup.
It's one of those. This is a clickbaity title, and it was kind of annoying when I got into it, but it was kind of interesting. They created an operating system called Spatial OS that is a cloud-based parallel processing kind of system that will allow them to build very large, close to real-life worlds. Not so much in the graphic level, but in the persistence and
They can have millions of things happening at once.
Yeah, you can have all of this stuff that's here on the table. All these things could be objects, and in order for it to be persistent, you move this here, it's going to have to stay that way. So we can get up and leave, and it'll still be over here. You break a window, it's going to be that way. That was the example that they used.
Yeah, right now they said that the world that they've been building is kind of sparse and everything, but the whole idea is that they'll be able to make this massively parallel, so it can be huge and very powerful. And eventually, they said if it's easy to say the Matrix because that's something that you guys can understand and it gives you the idea of the scope of this, but this is just the first building block. You know what I mean? This is this is like a computer from 1980 playing Frogger and be and we can't say that that's Crysis, but that's about the equivalent. To be like, hey, we've created Frogger, but one day these machines will make Crysis. I'm just saying that maybe that's how it is.
I'm just surprised that in the middle of this whole entire article, he didn't somehow find a way to drop in the quote of some people thought we lacked the programming language to describe our perfect world, but I think that, you just want to, never mind, I'm killing the quote here. But regardless, they've actually got a game that they're running with this. It's called Worlds Adrift, and I want to check this out because I'm really curious how this.
It's the size of Wales.
The map is the size of Wales, yeah.
Right, and I'm not talking SeaWorld here. I'm talking the country.
Yeah.
I
can pronounce it.
Well, it's a country inside another country. Isn't that how it works? Wales is the biggest country inside of the country of England.
We're all gonna die.
I'm from Kentucky. No, we don't believe that there in Kentucky. That's a stereotype. If you live anywhere outside, they're like, "Oh, if you're from Kentucky, you must be dumb." Stop that, everyone out there who thinks that. It's only Texas. Hate mail.
If you ever bump into me in a bar, ask me about my time in Somerset and the Texan accent I had to put on.
It's a pretty good story. Microsoft. They're going to start hosting data in Germany to hide it from U.S. spies, according to The Verge here.
I find this one
But that doesn't
really
make
interesting.
sense.
I know it doesn't make any sense because Germany. I mean, they're go ahead, Wendell. They're basically open.
The whole Five Eyes thing means that the the German spy agency will hand over things about non-German citizens to the United States. And so if Microsoft is putting United States data in Germany, then the German intelligence agency can completely free and clear of German law hand that information back to the United States. Now, unless the EU intervenes, or unless there have been recent developments in the EU that I'm not aware of, that I'm sure that somebody will let me know, then this seems really crazy. I mean, is and the flip side of that is the situation really so bad in America that Microsoft really thinks that the data has a better shot of being kept private in Germany, given that their lawyers should know that the German intelligence community would do that, because that's how they've, like the whole Five Eyes program. Just Google Five Eyes and look into that and tell me if that makes sense to you. So I really think we're missing something here.
I think I think Microsoft has almost given up on trying to secure things within the borders of the USA or for the US citizens. I think what they're doing here is they are trying to save their business with the rest of Europe. And saying like, hey guys, you guys can store stuff here in Germany. You're a non-US citizen. You can keep stuff here. Germany does have pretty strict data protection laws. And another thing that's another layer on top of this, the encryption that they're using cannot even be broken, and the data cannot be accessed by Microsoft employees. So it's another one of those things like Apple where they say, well, yeah, here's the phone, but we can't even open it, so don't even ask us.
I think the one bit that we're missing in this is that I do not believe that the data stores that they're creating in Germany are supposed to be used by U.S. citizens.
Yeah,
I think they're supposed to be used by EU citizens or UK and whatnot, and that way, because right now, if you use Microsoft Cloud Services, even though if you're in the UK, your data's in the US in one way, shape, or form. So they have to build these data centers in Germany and the UK, so then people in the EU can use the stuff locally, and it doesn't have to be it's no longer following under the jurisdiction of the United States government saying, oh, foreign people keeping their data on our soil, so in order for the U.S. to gain access to some EU members' data, they don't go through the U.S., they have to go through the UK, even though it's still owned by Microsoft.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like Germany's history of cooperating with America with this kind of stuff either. So go ahead, Wendell.
But that's true. Yeah, I mean, this is already playing out in the European court, I think, this is already playing out in American court with data that's stored, I think, what was it, in Ireland?
Ireland, yeah.
The U.S. courts have said, no, we've got jurisdiction because you're Microsoft and you operate in America. You need to go into those servers for us and get stuff. And the question is, can they be compelled to do that? And I think what it really comes down to, at least in America, is are these emails classified as business records or personal data? Because I think business records, Microsoft may actually be able to be compelled to do that. But some person's individual information, if it's defined that way for the purposes of the law, then maybe. But yeah, this data center in Germany is really about EU and EU customers. And so if if their lawyers are turning this into political maneuvering to just have, people on the EU say, well, wait a minute, US, what are you doing? This is purely an internal EU situation. Then, okay, maybe that makes sense. But I think that it's already the situation in the EU with the spying, even if you take the United States completely out of it, you've got, the British GCHQ giving data on German citizens to Germany, and the German spy organization giving data on British citizens to the GCHQ. So, I mean, it's just a shell game, and that's really all it is.
It's clever. I guess while we're over there in Germany, let's check out what's going on in Switzerland. They have some self-driving buses that they're going to start. These will be starting spring next year. The idea is that these buses will take you from the bus stop. You get on a regular bus with a dude driving. It's like, hey, man, I'm driving a bus. And so I guess that's what you do when you drive a bus. Hey, I'm driving a bus. And then you hop on one of these electric buses. They're like 7-seaters, and they take you straight to your door.
Yeah, it's going to be an automated car, auto-drive car, so you get to the last stop of the bus, and you're going to be able to load up a stack of people into one of these things, and it's going to drive you to your homes, because those homes may be a lot further away than the edge of the bus stop.
This is such a weird photo. It's like sitting in this grungy, graffiti-covered warehouse, and it's like this clean, modern thing. It's a juxtaposition, eh? Anyway, so that's just something to keep an eye on and see how that works. It could be, I don't know. Foreshadowing is the wrong word for this. It could set an interesting precedent for the future of electric vehicles in that part of the world.
And automatic drive vehicles, too.
Guys, it's freaking holidays, so we're doing some stuff for you over at the store, epicpants.com. We have some promo codes that we have. Over 100, you get $10 back. Over 200, you get $30 back. So that's pretty cool. Baseball caps. We have baseball caps now?
We have baseball caps?
We have baseball caps.
Oh, one of those.
I don't even. Do you even wear them? I've never seen you wear a cap.
Well, I'd like those ones. You can get that. If I can get them like that versus the snapbacks, I'd rather have the regular one. I don't want the snapback. I like the red. That's like a trucker cap. I will totally sell that to any trucker. I did the trucking thing. I don't.
These are cool regardless.
Okay,
by the way, these are also fitted, guys. So we got caps that are fitted.
Just take the stupid sticker off. That's all I gotta say. Do not leave that damn sticker on. I don't care how authentic you think it makes it look.
Take the sticker off. The other thing that's pretty cool is we have these new water bottles. We also got a whole line of different glasswares. Whiskey glasses, Lexington jiggers, which are like 3.5 ounces instead of the normal small-sized stuff. But check this out. We have some water bottles. I decided, why not, if you guys want some high-quality stuff. The thing with us is that, I go for the highest quality stuff I can find and then try to get it at like a decently low price. So we've got these. They're matte black, BPA free on the inside. It's, just fancy stuff. All aluminum, 24 ounces. So, and they got a carabiner on top so you can take it with you. We've also got some carabiner coffee cups coming in soon. Tons of stuff for you guys. So, yeah, check out the store. And, of course, shirt of the month. By the way, these, I didn't expect it, but the full-on desk mats are selling really fast, like faster than the standard size mouse pads. I didn't know you guys wanted desk mats so much, so we'll be getting some different desk mats.
I think also it's just because, that's really awesome artwork.
Sorry. Chris did a hell of a job. By the way, Chris is doing concept art for this Viander game.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for supporting the store, and we hope you guys are liking the products. That's the main thing here is, it's you guys are helping the channel out by grabbing stuff there, but at the same time, we want you guys to have the best stuff possible and get it at a price that's not ridiculous. So, cool.
So don't complain about the packaging.
Yeah, that's right. It's just shoved in there with some bubble wrap. No fancy clamshells and all that. All right, let's get on back over to data protection and all that sort of thing, and check out what's going on with the Tor network. So, we made a video called something about Tor being Torable. Is it Tor safe or is it Torable? I don't remember what it was, but we've been, at least I have. I've been very anti-Tor since the beginning because I saw that there was a lot of security holes in it. It can provide a layer of protection, but it's also become a target because of the layer of protection that it provides, and there's so many holes in it, guys. There are so many holes. People came onto our forum just a couple days ago, and they're like, why does Logan hate Tor so much? Well, this is another very good example of why I hate Tor, but there's something even bigger going on here and scarier. If we just remove Tor from the equation, what's happening is freaking ridiculous. So, the Tor project, right? You have to have entry points and exit points and all that sort of thing. Anyway, the FBI, I guess they could take a lot of heat if they were to start monitoring stuff without warrants and that sort of thing. What they did instead was they paid Carnegie Mellon University in Pennsylvania, which is one of the top science schools in the world. They paid them, looks like around $1 million to run some, I don't know. They're basically just grabbing up a bunch of data. They're grabbing up data on innocent people using Tor and on people who possibly are doing some nefarious things. But the point is that they're grabbing all this data and then after the fact looking for things that may be wrong so that the FBI can catch them and prosecute. But they're using, the thing that's weird here is that an arm of the law on a national level is using a very prestigious university or any university, but they're using them to help them conduct their business.
I would be very interested to see how this whole conversation kind of played out. Was this Carnegie Mellon was looking to do some research on something. They applied for a grant, and the FBI was like, come over into my office, and we've got some business to discuss. We will supply you with $1 million for your research, but you've got to do something for me. I'm like, was that how this conversation went down? Because I'd be very curious the legitimacy of how this got, signed off to go from FBI providing funds to Carnegie Mellon for doing a legitimate research project, because CMU's got to actually say on their books, this is a research project for this kind of thing, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. Data's being used here. It's got to be all written up somehow. I'd be very curious to see that. And I guess we have to do like a Freedom of Information request from CMU. If CMU is even going to be able to give it to us?
I don't know.
The $64,000 question here is, if this kind of FBI attack by university proxy is accepted, no one will have meaningful Fourth Amendment protections and everyone is at risk. This is exactly the same thing that the EFF has warned about in another thing that we've talked about a lot lately, which is the Trans-Pacific Partnership. One of the big things in the Trans-Pacific Partnership is it sort of provides a legal framework, legal guide work for corporations to gather and share information, or share information that they have gathered with authorities, or with the federal government or whatever. And so a lot of the rules of civil procedure, a lot of the rules of criminal procedure, evidence gathering and things like that apply to government agencies. Basically, there's nothing that stops a government institution or a police force from hiring a private investigator, say, and a private investigator has a lot more freedom than a police force or federal authorities. And this seems like the FBI sort of doing an end run around that. We've also talked about how cases with Stingray and cases with other stuff, we have this thing called parallel construction, where they're getting evidence illegally and they know that it's illegal, but then they have a quote-unquote random traffic stop on the guy that just happens to be the guy that's carrying whatever, or that just happens to be whatever. And then when they build their case, they say, well, this came about from a random traffic stop. But when you dig a little deeper, that evidence was not shared with the defense, and it's like, oh, it wasn't actually a random traffic stop after all. But you can't prove that, and you don't really know that that's going on. And so this sort of seems to be a systematic problem that we're having in America, because nobody wants to talk about Stingray, and no one wants to talk about the dangers of private institutions sharing data with the government. Because it's not like, I'm not saying that people need to be doing this to get away with illegal or immoral things, but what you think is completely fine may not be aligned at all with what the government thinks is completely fine, or the level of seriousness. I mean, look at the poor Aaron Schwartz guy. The dude committed suicide because he shared some scholarly journals online because they were threatening to put him in the pokey for 99 years or whatever. That's completely insane, but that's, more information sharing, total information awareness. Yeah, let's cause more college students to commit suicide. That'd be great.
So, I mean, this is a way bigger issue than just Tor. But don't use Tor. But that's
Tor is okay for transient use, but not okay for continuous use. So that's sort of the distinction that we make. Like if you're going to leak grandma's, cookie recipe, Tor is a great tool. Using Tor constantly for everything, not a great tool.
Yeah. All right, let's lighten it up a little bit here and talk about this 5-story vending machine for cars that's opening in Nashville. I'll go ahead and play this video here. So people are buying everything online. Now you can pretty much go and buy your car online. It's supposed to simplify the process. It's supposed to be a little bit cheaper because you're not having to deal with, man, they need to deinterlace this video. Who did this? Look at that. I can't even like finish my sentence because this video is terribly rendered. Anyway,
I would say the most interesting thing in this article is at the very end of the article, it's the list of links, and it's like, wow, has The Verge really gone to blog spam, where just buried in their list of links is an ad? Yes, they have.
Let's see, where is this? I'm going to scroll down. Sorry, everyone,
Thai
for the
shell
scrolling.
feast and beachfront tacos. A life worth eating, powered by something. I can't read. My font is too
Justin
small.
Bieber. Something about Justin Bieber doing some crap. I don't even care.
It's
anyway,
it's like what's
interesting?
It's blog spam.
What's interesting about this vending machine is really that you go through all of the process of selecting and purchasing your car online through their system, and then you either go there and you get your gigantic token, or you're mailed the token. I don't know how they want to do it. You probably go down and pick up your car, and you go to pick up your car, you pick up this little token, you drop it in, you put in your name.
That's like half the experience. I think people are going to be so excited about that. Some people maybe, that's like one way to get them to do this instead of go to a dealer. A lot of people are more comfortable with a dealer, but they say that sometimes you can go through the entire process, getting the financing, getting your car in 20 minutes.
Well, this is the difference between going down and having to sit down with a sales guy for a while. This is mostly, I believe, used cars. It's not new cars, and it's this one company, Carvana, and they, they're a dealership, but it's like a CarMax kind of dealership. And that's what they kind of reference in here. So it's not, it's not like we're going down to the Lamborghini dealership and getting one of these. So that would be really cool.
You see, the Lamborghini dealership wouldn't take credit. It would just be impulse buy only.
Yeah.
And it would probably work if you just build them in certain areas.
You can drop your Amex black card into the vending machine. I want the black one. There's your car.
What is it? Build one on Fisher Island, and Miami build one, and Malibu build one, and
the
place in Connecticut to build one in Palm Beach.
We should go to the one right around here and be like, guys, I've got it. You just need to build a vending machine, and then your ultra rich people come in here and buy your Maseratis. Just saying. We should build it for them.
I understand this.
It's like a soda pop.
We can lease less acreage. Okay, this is great for a car dealership in Manhattan, but in most places in the country, you're not really, acreage is not really that big of a deal. So why wouldn't you just have your car inventory online in a big lot and somewhere that you wouldn't otherwise care? And then you just show up and it's like, oh, let me get your car for you. And there's just a guy there that just goes and gets your car from the back or from the sewage dump or wherever it is you've got the cars stashed. I mean, it would take about as time as the robotic loading mechanism thing. So, I mean, I could see this in like Manhattan, if you need a car dealership in Manhattan. But, if you go across the shore to Jersey, there's a lot of room there. I don't really know that you need a vertical car robot thing just to make it easier to buy cars. There's this thing called the internet where you can just totally buy a car on the internet. And then maybe the thing here is to give people a computer where they can buy the car online at the dealership, because that would lower staff. I don't know. This seems crazy.
I think that they're doing this just as a gimmick, and I think it'll wear out sooner than later. But until then, I think it'll be quite successful because people are like, I got my car out of a vending machine. Something to talk about while you're getting your beard trimmed or your hair did.
You wouldn't download a car, would you? Same.
I would
download a car if I could download a car
and watch my car being 3D printed.
There you go. See, I want to download the car. I want to submit it to the car printer, and then go down and it'll be done in about 10 hours.
40 mochas later, you have diseases and your car.
Yay!
All right, let's get into some hardware stuff here. We got a lot of hardware to talk about this time.
Good.
Quite a bunch of interesting things.
How did I miss this article? This one's creeping me out already.
All right, well, it's okay. This is weird. The FCC a while back said that alternative software being installed on routers, they didn't really want that to be a thing, but it's kind of weird verbiage. They had, for security requirements, they wanted to make sure that they weren't installing any foreign firmwares or anything like that. They wanted to make sure that there was certain software limitations on all devices, routers, and that sort of thing.
I think it was I think it's one of those, we were just trying to do the right thing, kind of intent was to prevent malicious firmwares from getting installed on a device.
Yeah, I hope so.
I think that was the intent. That's just my guess on the matter.
So the public freaked out, of course, because everyone wanted to install Tomato or DDRT or Open WRT, whatever. They wanted to install their own firmwares on their routers. So the public kind of freaked out, and then they revised things. And in the revision, they were like, "Well, listen, you guys can install other firmwares, but the hardware has to be limited to these specifications." Meaning that if you install custom firmware, you can't have access to extra radio frequencies, or you can't force the hardware to do extra things. Now, the weird thing is about that is that how do you do that? Because if you have hardware and your current, like if you have, let's say you have like a Linksys router and the hardware is currently using, it's currently doing X, Y, and Z. You install DDWRT, it can utilize the hardware more fully.
It's no longer software restricted, yeah.
How do you stop it at a hardware level? You're going to have to go to like Broadcom and those companies and force them to impose these restrictions? It seems a
It's
bit
not
weird.
even so much that it's a restriction. If the chip is capable of handling, if you're looking at just wireless signaling, channel 3 through or channel 2 through 11, and we put DDWRT, suddenly you're able to open up channels 1 through 14 because the chip is able to do that. All Broadcom's got to do is just hard lock the chips to no longer allow those upper frequencies, or just remove them from the code of the chip to allow those frequencies to exist in the chip in the first place.
Yeah.
The problem is that if the driver is open source, it's still easy for it to be modified. And that's the part I think that the FCC has missed the boat on here, is that they don't seem to understand that there's a generic processor that's powering this thing. I mean, before too long, this is all going to be software-defined radio, meaning that the entire function of the radio is defined in software, and literally the frequencies, and not like how wide the frequency it is, whether it's a 20 megahertz band or a 40 megahertz band or a 42 megahertz band or a 41.75 megahertz band, all of that is going to be defined in software. And we really, really need open source versions of those drivers. We deal with a lot of binary blobs for that as it is now. But even if we have binary blobs for all of these particular drivers, it's still possible for somebody to reverse engineer and hack the drivers and turn this on and off and do that kind of thing. And most drivers just say, what's your region? And you tell it, and then it's like, all right, you get these frequencies. But if you tell it you're in a different region, then you get a different set of frequencies. And it's not because it's completely software-defined radios. It's just because that they've got one piece of hardware that actually supports it. The reality is that it is much easier for a device manufacturer to completely lock it down so that no software customization can happen cryptographically, without the private key or whatever, as a whole, than it is to impose the kind of restrictions on the individual radio or the individual chip or anything like that. The other thing that you run into is that the FCC has very specific rules for how good a transmitter can be and how much it's going to output. And a lot of the time when they implement this hardware, they'll actually over-engineer it and then underdrive it in software. And so some of the software opens it up to where you can actually overdrive it for the original engineering, because when they're designing the circuit, they don't know what the signal-to-noise ratio is going to be. For example, there's several considerations like this. And so if the signal-to-noise ratio is awful, they'll turn it up. But if the signal-to-noise ratio is actually pretty good, they'll try to sort of come in under the radar, under like the 100 milliwatt limit, depending on what actually leaves the antenna versus what the radio is actually trying to do in terms of dissipated energy. So there's a little bit of a difference there in terms of the radio. And so what the FCC failed to consider is that manufacturers are going to look at this and say, well, the easy solution here is we just use a ROM chip and nobody can modify the software.
Just lock it down.
The hard solution is that we give people the ability to customize some of the firmware, but not all of it. It works great if you have different radios and different hardware doing stuff. But look at cell phones. I mean, there's not really any difference between the cellular radio firmware and the rest of the firmware in the system. And so it's got the same kinds of problems. And the FCC is like, oh, what are we doing? But software-defined radio is where it's going to go for low-cost stuff.
Because the hard version of this is we make one chip for every region, one chip that's got very specific capabilities, or you design.
It's also more expensive.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's gonna be a disincentive for them to make stuff that's compatible with open firmwares. It's gonna be way easier for them to just be like, screw it, just do it this way. They're gonna have to go out of their way to do it, and it'll maybe only some of the high-end devices that they know or a big chunk of their market are people who are just gonna be like, yeah, give me your crap firmware. I'm gonna install my own. I don't care because your hardware is nice. That market may still be taken care of because they realize in order to sell this product, it's going to have to work with third-party firmware.
Or it's just going to be it's a really high-end device, so it's got fancier bells and whistles and whatnot.
Anyway, so yeah, I don't think they fully get what's going on. That is the FCC. So,
I think it's
trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, well, one, they're trying to do the right thing, and two, it's we're dealing with the Communication Commission. It's radio frequencies, and they're looking at it from an entirely different perspective than this chip that's over here. They're looking at the rules and regulations of the airwaves and blah blah blah. It's a completely different perspective on the entire problem. So they don't even see where the problems are going to come up because of these decisions.
Yeah. Are you guys ready to talk about this new CPU from Intel? No.
Yeah, no.
6950, 60, what am I, 600 and something thousand 10 cores.
6,950X, or is it a 6950-10? I mean, I've been should be wearing my I Struggle shirt.
It's a 695010.
10, yeah, it's an i7 6950
Anyway.
10. Anyway, it's 10 CPU cores.
20 threads.
What do you define a CPU core as? Anyway, I'm going to
I
leave
don't know.
that
We'll
right
talk to AMD about that later. We'll get into that in just a minute. I think I've got that article opened up. So this is going to be compatible with the current X99 stuff, and that's why I'm really excited. They've got a few different parts coming out. That's going to be the big expensive one, probably be around $1,000 or more, 1,400 and whatever. I'm not sure. They don't have any prices listed here, but you can expect it to be expensive because it's got the X on it, and X means extreme because extreme is spelled with an X, of course. That's what they're going to do. So if you want the biggest, the fastest, 20 threads in a consumer product. Not just for the servers anymore.
Coming out is basically clocked at a 3 gigahertz.
Yeah, everyone's going to push that thing to 4 gigahertz, I guarantee it, or 4.2 or something like that.
If they don't lock it down for the first $1,000
It's
release.
a K part. No, it's an X part. The X parts are always unlocked. And then the K parts are also unlocked, which they also have a couple K parts coming out. They've got the, the 6900K and the 6850K and a 6800K. So you got some 6 cores and some 8 cores coming in there. I think I'm most excited about the 8 cores because those are going to be way less expensive than the current 8 core. The current 8 core is that's the extreme part. So having a 10 core with 20 threads means that the 8 cores are going to be way cheaper, which is going to be nice. And then their naming scheme's a little weird. They've also got some new stuff coming out for the Z170 platform, like the 6700K, but that's a different platform. So there'll be a little bit of confusion there. I think any person who's not like an insider with these naming schemes, they're always like, I don't know what it means. How fast is the CPU? There's just a bunch of numbers. So, yeah.
I just had a little bit of an epiphany here, though. I mean, we're looking at it says here, this i7 6900K should rock a frequency of 3.3 gigahertz.
The thing says it should rock. Tweaktown says should rock.
Yeah.
I've never... No. We can't allow this.
Yeah,
you cannot use the word rock to describe the frequency of a CPU. A CPU will never rock a frequency. Tweaktown.
If I put a speaker up next to it, maybe. No, but it says it's got 20 megs of cache, and I was just thinking about them like 20 megs. Man, I remember when my hard drive was that size.
I gotta find that. Where is it? Yes, it's gonna rock. It's rocking 15 megabytes of L3
Wait,
cache,
no, okay, no. You have the it'll never rock a frequency. I'm going to sit here and say they're using rock to describe rocking a frequency, and then it's going to rock 15 megs of L3 cache on the other two processors. And I'm like, come on, pick an adjective to work with one type of...
No. Rock can be used to describe, I guess, amounts of cache now. So how much cache does that rock?
Can go. So
we've totally off subject now. Wendell, how do you feel about this stuff that's rocking 3 gigahertz?
Paper.
He wins.
Paper covers rock.
I just don't think that was going to work there. You're going to say it rocks the frequency, but it papers the 15 megs. Wait a minute, that's not right. Or is it going to scissor the 15 megs of L3 cache?
Probably going to kill myself.
It's going to lizard spock it. That's what it's going to do.
I'm over that stuff. I'm over it.
Virtual reality just got real. People took their headsets off and went outside. Wait, what?
Nope. They put on more things. They put on headsets and hand sets and elbow sets and shoulder sets and bicep sets. Biceps sets. Yeah, that's what it is. So yeah, there's a company in, I think, was it Germany? Yeah, that's what it is. What's it called here? I forgot the name of the company. I don't care anymore. So some researchers in Germany have put together this thing. Now it's different than just your regular haptic feedback, or it's haptic feedback, but it's different than just like attaching, like a little vibration unit like you would have in your phone or something, because the stuff that they have will actually simulate the feeling of pushing or pulling, and that sort of thing. So you'll have a greater tactile sensation. And right now they've got them on, you can put them on like your feet, so that if there's a game where you can kick around a soccer ball and you can feel each bump of the soccer ball, and it actually feels like a soccer ball's hitting your foot. It doesn't just feel like there's a mild vibration. It actually feels like they've simulated an impact.
Where exactly are these guys? You said Germany?
Germany, yeah.
Cool. If anybody out there sees this and they know anybody or are familiar with the company that's doing this,
here it is.
Tell them to call
HCI.
us and give us an offer to come and hang out and check this stuff out, because I'd be very curious about this.
I mean, it's all ridiculous, but it's necessary. No one's going to be using this at home. I don't think anyone's
I will.
going to... Really? You put all this stuff on and
Prototyping, man. You got to start somewhere.
walk by the room and just look inside and be like, oh, he's doing that stuff again. You're like wired
I'm
up
pretending to be a Ninja Turtle.
Cowabunga.
I think
Dude.
I think it's probably going to be like in Fallout 4 where you climb inside the power armor. You're going to climb inside the VR suit. It's going to be like, that or the Iron Man armor where you just walk inside it and then it's like, okay, here's your, haptic feedback, magnetic field, whatever.
So I'm gonna sneak around. I'm gonna always sneak up on you and steal your reactor core, so then you just just go you power down. That's what's gonna happen. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to have some kind of weird heart thing, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We're
So
building Iron
interesting. Yeah, let's move on then. Linux gaming. Oh, this is sad. We'll get to that in a second. Linux gaming. Ars Technica has published an article. Did I send you this one, or when did I forget if I sent you this one? The one where Ars Technica they benchmarked a few games and found out that Windows 10 was just spanking Ubuntu. They're using an old GTX 680 or something, 660. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not real sure.
I don't know what to make of that. I don't know what to make of this either.
I read through it, and what it seems to be is they had a system that they built a year and a half, 2 years ago when SteamOS was first mentioned, and they built it, put it alongside Windows 7, and they did like some side-by-side comparisons. Yay, it's going to be SteamOS, blah, blah, blah. And then they pretty much dug that exact same machine out of the closet, dusted it off, updated SteamOS to the new stuff.
This is a terrible machine, by the way. It's got a dual-core Pentium G. It's like not a good machine at all.
Yeah, the idea here wasn't so much that we were expecting this to do well. It was, how will this compare to the same game, exact same hardware? The only difference really is hard drive A is running Windows, hard drive B is running SteamOS. And in this case, SteamOS did anywhere between 25 and 50% worse than Windows 10.
In the games that they selected. Now, I've seen some other benchmarks where it's neck and neck, but they didn't play any of those games. They played Shadow of Mordor, which is a bit better on Windows, and then they also played a lot of Source Engine games that had pretty big deltas between. Like SteamOS was not doing well. Now, I guess my big problem with this is that, okay, yeah, it's a really old system, and they wanted to write this article or whatever, but with more modern hardware, there's not as big of a difference, and especially when you start comparing some of the newer games that are going to be coming out pretty soon that are going to support Vulkan. I mean, they just added Vulkan support to the latest version of the Unreal Engine, and we already have the prototype of the Zweihander game running in Ubuntu. Works just fine. So, yay! Anyway, so we'll have full Vulkan support for anything that we produce, here in-house. But also, once that's available, it's going to change. And also, I think it's a little bit irresponsible to do it on this hardware, because this hardware is so old. You could build this system for like $200 or $300 for the same amount of money, $300 or $400. I mean, say $300 or $400, you could build something with a way more modern GPU and possibly a quad core instead of a dual core. I don't know.
I kind of want to redo this article with modern stuff, because Phoronix had a lot of really interesting stuff in their article, and it was more promising. And it is true that the graphics system in Linux is undergoing a major overhaul right now. Vulkan is going to completely change this, and the overhaul to Wayland, I think, on Linux is probably also going to completely change this. The reality is that OpenGL is just too complicated to program for, and some of the driver enhancements really are because the driver on Windows says, oh, you're running Tomb Raider? Let's use a different shader for Tomb Raider. And Linux just doesn't get that level of attention. And so it's not exactly an apples to oranges comparison, but if you want a push-button gaming experience, then Linux is not quite there yet. But it's getting there really fast. And there's already a lot of games that actually do work really well on Linux, mostly from the developers that really get and understand Linux. But also don't forget that Valve has that DirectX 9 thing that they did to port it to Linux, and in the preliminary testing that we did with that, we were getting basically the same speeds with things that Valve had done that used that. And so there are some games, Dying Light was one of the ones where we actually did have considerably worse performance on Linux, and that may be worth a revisit on modern hardware, not old hardware like this. So that might be something that I do in the next couple of weeks, or we all do together and we undertake and see what's going to go, what's going to happen.
I mean, Linux is not 100% just yet, and like I'm playing a lot of my games currently on Windows, like Fallout 4. You can actually play that on Play on Linux or Wine. It'll actually work. But the thing that I want to do is I want to run some E and Bs or some, reshade is the new thing. And that uses some alternate versions of your DirectX DLL, and you can get those working on Linux, but it is just such a pain. I just want to play it. So,
well,
from the standpoint of that,
I want to touch on that real quick because you're talking about. Well, you're also talking about like the Play on Linux stuff and Fallout 4 being that.
I mean, you can do it. It's really difficult
because you're taking and you're modifying the underlying DirectX
right, because Play on
base.
Linux and Wine, they have their own DirectX libraries in there, and so being able to override those and that sort of thing, it's not as simple as just throwing a DLL in the folder like it is on Windows, the same folder as your exe. It's not the same as just doing that.
When we get games that are going to be coming out with more Vulkan support, and we're moving that direction, and in all reality, if you can get to a point where we're running Vulkan on Windows and it's faster than DirectX, that's really my ultimate goal in all of this.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it'll be faster than DirectX 12, but I'm sure it'll be a viable alternative.
I think it's because of the fact that DirectX 12 is basically Mantle baked into. You also have to understand
it's Mantle with bells and whistles.
And we have to go into a really big conversation as to what DirectX actually is. I mean, it's an API, yes, but it's Microsoft's answer to accessing the hardware. And Mantle just changed out how they were going to access the hardware directly, and put some interesting things there. But I would like to see what happens, because if Vulkan is effectively the same thing as Mantle, but it's just a different API. I mean, you go back to DirectX 3. When we get into Windows 98, and DirectX was the first starting to kick into gear, and Windows 2000, Windows XP, your OpenGL stuff was neck and neck with and sometimes faster in Windows than DirectX.
And then the OpenGL team did some terrible things, and it became a very sad story. A very long, sad story. About how it just kind of just collapsed. Yeah. OpenGL could have been awesome. I mean, back then.
It was very awesome, and it just hit a wall. And I think ultimately that's what I'd like to see. If you can get to a point where Vulkan runs things faster, or things will run faster and smoother and better through Vulkan in Windows, you will see a unified experience on Windows, Mac, your Linux-based everything, and all the way down to the point where why wouldn't you even put this on like a PlayStation?
Screw that. Let's bring back 3DFX and run everything in a glide wrapper. That's what we're doing from now on. I've decided.
Glide wrappers. That's a term I haven't heard for a while.
That's because the technology's been baked into everything. Don't get me started.
I've been playing Rayman. Rayman 2 is a great game. I liked it. It's way better on PC than it was on the console. Great on N64. Good game. The soundtrack I think it also had a really good soundtrack on PlayStation, but the digital soundtrack was really awesome. I started loading that up, and then there was the glide splash screen, and I was like, whoa.
I want to say
glide
something.
Wrappers, man.
I want to put something into perspective about Glide and the Voodoo cards, is that Glide and Voodoo, Glide is to the Voodoo cards as GameWorks is to the NVIDIA cards. Because what was Glide was all of those things that were going on, they were baking them into the graphics processor. So it was, instead of being done here and handed to the graphics processor to render, because this is back when 3D rendering was just becoming a thing. That was the next step, and everything's done that since then. But like GameWorks being a very specific thing for the NVIDIA stuff, that's what Glide was too.
So it's basically GlideWorks.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's in a nutshell. Anybody's
going to murder us.
That's in a nutshell. Well, no, they own 3DFX now, so we can say that.
Yeah, I know, but if the Glide is not something that conjures up too many fond memories, especially when you're trying to run Glide games in Windows.
And that's now. If you didn't have a Voodoo card, it's the same thing as running GameWorks on anything other than NVIDIA. That was my reference point. Is that Glide was really great if you were running Voodoo, and it was really, really great if you were running Voodoo cards. It was good stuff. Anyway.
How about some quantum computing? You guys want to talk about that for a minute? Google is planning some sort of big announcement on December 8th. We're not sure what it is, but they've been working with that Canadian company D-Wave that has like a sort of a quantum computing initiative going on. They've been working with some big companies like NASA and a few others, but yeah, I don't know.
Skynet.
I don't know what to make of this. Just that we need to be ready for, in about a month, we're going to have a very interesting. I'm scrolling around like a bastard. People online always comment, "Stop scrolling while you're talking." I'll leave it alone, guys. So I don't know. You got any predictions on what they may be talking about, Wendell?
They're probably going to say that, hey, we've got a commercially viable quantum computer, we've probably got some prototypes that are ready to go. Here are the applications that it has. It's going to be available commercially to enterprise customers, or it may not be available to enterprise customers. These computers may only be available as a service platform, and they don't let it go. Kind of like what happened with Bitcoin. It's like when Bitcoin miners were designing ASICs. It was like, we'll sell you ASICs, and then it was like, wait a minute, why don't we just hang on to the ASICs and use them to mine stuff until they're not worth very much, and then mail them off. It'll be like that, but with quantum computers instead of Bitcoin miners.
All right. I'm just going to wait and see what happens. Let's go ahead and talk about the AMD lawsuit that's happened. So AMD was sued, class action lawsuit, because people are upset about the way that they're handling that they're calling their I guess their bulldozer stuff 8-core.
They were saying that it's not truly an 8-core processor because a core is not really defined, but kind of, and it's defined in this manner where you've got this, and this.
They're upset about the way the cache is being handled.
They were nitpicking at the not very defined definition of core, and then they're saying that it's not really 8 cores, that it's only 4, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, but they were really upfront about what it was from the get-go. I mean, it's like, I don't even know.
Right, the architecture's been public for a long time, and you got a couple cores, and they're sharing a pool of cache, then which is sharing a bigger pool of, which is, each pair of cores has their own cache. They don't individually have cache.
Each integer processor has its own cache. They share a cache, and then that module shares a cache, and then the entire bit shares a bigger cache, which is kind of the same way that, the Intel chips, each core's got a level 1, level 2 cache, and then it shares a level 3. Am I right on that one, Wendell?
Yeah, depending on the most of the problem here stems from a very early press release where they said, yeah, this is going to be a consumer part with 8 cores. And I think they're trying to make their case completely on that and the performance there. The problem is that AMD there is some pretty good evidence that AMD did actually misrepresent to shareholders about sales and particulars that I think they're going to try to use in this case to say, well, look, AMD has a history of behavior here. The reality is that it is super technical, and that when the technical information came out, it was not really misleading. I mean, there are certain instructions that you can actually execute, 8 at a time for all intents and purposes. But things like the floating point unit, you're not, there's not 8 floating point units. You can't do 8 sets of floating point at the same time.
Right.
And so I don't know that I would really fault them for that. I mean, I don't know if that's good marketing or what, but there was some very early documentation where they explained it very clearly. But there was one press release from a long time ago where they said 8 cores, and that's what they're basing their whole case on. And I hope that they can't be sued for that, but I worry.
Well, I want to point out, you said something about the floating point unit. Is that, if I remember correctly, it's a 256 floating point unit that can be addressed as 2 128-bit floating point units. So you could technically run 8 128-bit floating point calculations at the same time. Don't quote me on that unless you dig it up. I think I could be wrong, but I was reading something about that in the midst of all of this crap going on. Is that's how the FPUs are kind of in this weird middle state, and it gets really crazy. Bottom line, if you're going to get technical, a floating point unit is a math coprocessor that, if you go back far enough, a CPU didn't have one.
This is going to go to court, and the argument is not going to be about whether or not it has the 8 cores. The argument is going to be, what's the definition of a core here? And then, based upon that definition, why have I gone to this voice? That's just a lawyer voice. Southern lawyer voice. They're probably going to try this in Texas. Is that the case? I don't even know. And then, based upon that definition, how many cores does this part have? So they're going to have to answer that other question first. They're going to define core, what it is first.
This is difficult to conceptualize, I thought of something that is easier to conceptualize, that is interesting, and it is related to what Qain is saying about the floating point unit. And that is, if you have an executable that is compiled with Intel's compiler makes some really dumb choices when it's trying to figure out what kind of CPU that you're running on. There is a program you can download that will patch your binary executables from Intel's C compiler for AMD CPUs, and you will get dramatically way better performance on AMD CPUs by patching your binary, by sort of removing the really dumb boneheaded choices that Intel makes. If it says, it's not if AMD do something dumb, it's if not Intel do something dumb. And it's like, oh, it's done in the name of compatibility, and it's like, I don't know if that really flies, Intel. And so
that's what the code actually says
like,
when you look at it.
Yeah.
in terms
If
of
not
like
Intel,
actually
ruin this person's life.
kneecapping something,
Yeah.
it's just, I mean, that's actually kneecapping something on AMD. And so, does that give rise to grounds for a lawsuit? I mean, what's going on with the compiler? I don't know. That's the kind of thing that got Intel in trouble in the EU. They were actually fined $1 billion in the EU over similar, not shenanigans like that, but OEM shenanigans in terms of trying to make sure that OEMs don't carry AMD stuff and by giving them pricing incentives and things like that.
It's kind of
But these
interesting
things
the
are
amount
super
of
technical.
go ahead. It's interesting the amount of times that Intel has been caught doing something really ridiculous and anti-competitive. They've been fined. There's no class action lawsuit against them, but they've done so many things that are not only anti-competitive but also anti-consumer.
And then they just sit back and go, but we were just trying to do the right thing.
No, they don't even say that. They were like, "Oh shit, we got caught." That's what they do. They know they were
squirrel.
doing the wrong thing. They're like, "What the fuck is that? Squirrel!" And they run. And they're like, "Oh, we got caught again. They tackled us this time, and they're taking our money." All right, just pay it. You know what? They probably didn't lose as much money as they gained from doing that, and they've driven AMD to this point where they're in huge trouble. If you go back through history, AMD is at this point not because of the choices that they've made. They're at this point because the anti-competitive things and the sabotage coming from the other side. So that's why they're here. That's why they're at this point.
Well, I mean, imagine if if say this compiler was able to do something less dumb when it was not an Intel CPU, and it was capable of making that performance drastically better on an AMD chip, and then you started to look at, wait a minute, this chip is a third of the cost of this Intel chip that's supposed to be on a comparable level, but once you start making intelligent decisions about how the binary works, and suddenly you're like, well, wait a minute, we're leaving it in the dust. I mean, I remember back when the Athlon chips came out, and it might have even been before that. I think it was the K62, and I think it was the Athlon chips, and they were doing the SSE instruction better and faster than Intel by a long shot. I mean, it was incredible in how much better it was doing that specific calculation better than the Intel chips. And it was the Intel's instruction set that they were beating them on, which was like, whoa, wait a minute, that's pretty awesome. And that's when AMD made their leaps and strides to being like this really great chip manufacturer.
Back at the original FX.
Before the FX. We're talking the Athlon chips
XPs and stuff?
Athlon XPs and the MPs, and before that even, I think it was the K62.
Yeah, I think it was the FX chip when Intel finally said, oh shit, and then that's when they started doing a lot of their really anti-competitive stuff to cripple them immediately. They started paying vendors, and people, system builders, they were giving them huge chunks of money or giving them, whatever free stuff to not carry the AMD parts. They were more interested in that than they were in making a profit, because they knew that this is the point where AMD could get ahead and possibly stay ahead for a while. So by trying to cripple them right then and there, they were able to swing the market back in their favor. And now it's way in favor of Intel. I mean, like, Intel's top of the line stuff is expensive, but AMD can't compete with it.
And it's almost like, it's not even like they're trying to, like, you say cripple, and it's not like they're saying, oh, let's go break that guy's leg. It's more like, oh, let's go spread some really nasty seed type stuff in his lawn so it will attract the nasty bugs and the reptiles, so when he goes to leave his house, he's got to step on all of these reptiles that are in his house that are going to give him like cancer or something.
Yeah, I'm not anti-Intel. I mean, the thing here is that I am really for a market that has options, because that's good for consumers. I know there's a lot of Intel fanboys out there that think that we just love AMD. No, we love a balanced market.
I like a balanced market, and I dislike really shady business behaviors that what Intel does.
I guess the big problem with that,
some other companies that we will not go
into
right
a lot
now.
of the big problems with that is that the companies that are being really shady, the ones who are cheating are winning.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, whatever. They're cheating, they're winning. It's like that's actually good business because they're winning.
And you go again. I said back with AMD versus Intel, and it's not even so much of which chip is better. It's which chip can do a specific task when it's assigned the math. When it, like you said, when the binary is prepared in a specific manner that is more effective for a different type of CPU. Does that make a does that change the performance? Because we're not talking about the same hardware. Technically they're supposed to be kind of like generalized. They're supposed to both be able to do the same thing, but you and I both might be able to run a quarter mile in 5 minutes, but I'm going to take 10 extra strides than you because you're taller than me. We're doing things differently. I might take a different path. I might leap better, or might have a more powerful, longer stride than you. But you don't need one because you got longer legs. It's different.
Intel has longer legs. That's their new marketing strategy.
Yeah, Intel's got longer legs. They've got 10 of them too.
Yeah, now they do.
I don't know. Anyway, I'm just kind of rambling at this point, but it's
Intel is almost a squid.
That would be 9.
Yeah,
that's an odd number of cores.
It is.
Anyway, it'll be interesting to see where all that goes. It hurts me because it's like, why are you doing this right now, right before the Zen chip comes out? It's like, what are you trying to do?
They're trying to make as
an
much money
already
as possible.
Crippled company. Their stock price is tanked, and now it's like, oh, while they're down, let's kick them some more.
Of course, they're going to keep making money.
And it's not even Intel doing this lawsuit. It's just some asshat. I'm like, I don't know. I don't understand the mentality behind this. It's like, if everybody out there who bought a CPU is gonna be like, they owe me $20.
If Intel got away with like the CPU dispatcher thing in 2009, I don't understand how AMD wouldn't get a pass for this on the whole cores thing. The CPU dispatcher thing in Intel, it really, like, from the outside looking in, knowing a thing or two about compilers and software development, it looks really shady. But again, what's going on here?
We're going to transition into some gaming stuff here, but we're going to start off with the augmented reality headset that's coming from Asus next year. Now, we mentioned that they might do augmented reality, but now it appears that it is a thing. There's not a lot of details here, and I guess AR is the thing that I'm looking for more than VR. Well, one thing, you can see right through those lenses, so you can. The big thing for me is you gotta be able to drink while you're doing this. Can you imagine trying to drink while you're wearing an Oculus?
When you start looking,
we're talking like juice.
When you anything doesn't matter. It's
juice.
AR has got its place. VR has its place. And I know when we were at PAX, we got a lot of hate going. Why do these people hate VR? It's like, I don't hate VR. I am not going to sit here and be like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever, or this is the best it's ever been. And it may very well be the best it's ever been, but it doesn't mean that it's viable for a consumer market yet. AR would be viable for a consumer market.
Right, it's
faster,
ready to go. It's ready to go.
Yeah, because you don't really need anything other than you put this on, it's going to scan the room, and suddenly you've got I've got an extra fake cup that I can drink out of here. Where in VR, it has to be spatially aware in such a manner that allows me to be spatially aware and be able to get up and move around, or get into my little walking suit, or any of those things. And when we were doing the GLaDOS demonstration with NVIDIA and Valve for was it the Vive?
The Vive, yeah, the HTC Vive.
The problem I had was I was very well aware on my own self of where that cable was, and I was afraid to move around because the moment I let myself get into the system, I was afraid I was going to trip over the cable and rip the whole thing out of the wall, because I would have gotten excited and got into that, and that's the last thing you want to do is just have that thing rip out, which that would have been terrible. And that's what I mean, is that AR, when we did the AR stuff, it's like, oh, we were just sitting here talking to each other.
Yeah, you can see each other, but you can also see the game world.
But then at the same time, when we were in Computex, we did a VR demonstration there where me and Paul got into a disc throwing battle. But when you and Wendell stepped into the line of the Kinect, that was the spatial awareness of the room, I could see like ghost images of you guys. And actually, the really creepy part is, all the weird stuff they talk about, the Kinect can see through stuff? Yeah, it can see through stuff. That's all I'm saying. It was a scary, scary, traumatizing moment.
You'll never forget it.
I hate you so much. Anyway, AR is cool, and I'm really excited about Asus getting into the market because they're not trying to compete with like Cast AR or anything like that. They're directly trying to compete with the HoloLens.
Yeah, the thing that I would wonder about this sort of thing is the platform. Are these platforms all going to be completely disconnected, or are we going to have a unified platform where it's like you go out and you pick? I mean, is it going to be like a monitor? You know, where you go out and you can buy an HP monitor, or you can buy a Shimian, or you can buy another Korean monitor, or you can buy a Dell, and they're all going to display the same things, or is it going to be like you have to make applications specifically for the Asus VR AR headset, or you have to make something specifically for whatever else, the HoloLens?
I think the first
is that how it's going to be?
Couple of generations are going to be in that manner, where you're going to have you're going to have to develop for this product or develop for that product. Where you get something like Cast AR, that was really easy because you're not doing anything in the real world. You're projecting a game environment,
and that
which is done through Unity and whatnot and that kind of jazz.
Just a plugin for Unity, so that's very easy.
And all you're really doing is projecting what would be on your screen, but you're projecting it out into the reflective surfaces in front of you. So I think initially you get like HoloLens, you get this. I think you're going to see you have to write something, and it's just going to be like Windows versus Linux in that kind of fashion. It's not just a monitor because it has to be aware of what's going on. So you'll have an API, and if they're smart, they'll all get together. And again, I'm figuring version 2 or 3, and they'll be like, okay, so we got all these products, but nobody's buying them because nothing is compatible. So let's create an API that can be used with all of our devices, so it'll translate to everything and whatnot, and then you'll see one piece of software. It doesn't matter if you have HoloLens or Asus's version or HTC's whatever. It doesn't matter. You're going to be able to have the same experience, or you're going to have the same program will work with all of them. That's my theory.
We'll see. All right, let's get into
that's my hypothesis. My hypothesis.
It's more scientific, all right. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about gaming. I guess most of you guys out there have just been playing Fallout all week. So, Wendell, you been playing Fallout yet?
I have been playing Fallout. Not a lot. I've only got about 8 hours in so far. So
I haven't really played it yet, but I modded it already.
I put my my Pip-Boy on. I almost brought it in here, but I was like, I had to dig it out of the box. But actually, I've been looking at Legacy of the Void. I put StarCraft 2 on because everybody else is playing Fallout and spending 4,000 hours crafting Beavis and Butthead's faces into the characters, or some.
That's a good use of time, man.
I mean, I saw one of those little comics. It was a guy like, "Yay, I got Fallout 4," and he goes in, and he sits down in his living room. He's got his controller because I guess he's a console player. And then he, the next frame, he's got like a 5 o'clock shadow. There's like 8 cans of something on the floor, and then the next frame, it's like the floor is littered with cans. He's got like gigantic wizard beard, and the next frame, his buddy's standing there. He's like, "Finally, I'm done." He's like, "What? You beat the game?" He goes, "No, I finished building my character."
I thought he was slowly becoming a Linux sysadmin.
Well, that's probably what happened there. But no, I mean that I'll get into it eventually. I had to wait an extra day because I had to wait for my Pip-Boy to show up.
Holy crap! I might play it tonight.
Maybe. I mean, I'm gonna go play StarCraft. I'm really curious about that came out the day before Legacy of the Void came out, so. It's all there.
There was
at the same
a crafting
time.
mechanic. I tried not to read very much about Fallout 4 because of the whole hype train, and I'm still participating in the hype train, and I'm sorry. It hurts my soul. But the whole crafting mechanic kind of caught me by surprise because it was like, well, I knew you could do some stuff, but then I got into it, and it's like, wow, there's a lot here. Yeah. So, but I'm also deeply annoyed that the power. Spoiler alert. I don't know. Maybe. I'm also deeply annoyed that the power armor seems to require fusion cores to operate, and those seem to be in short supply. And so my usual method of play is to, slowly wash over an area, inch by inch. And that's not a good strategy in power armor that has time-limited use fusion cores. And so what I'm finding that I do is go in and clear an area, then take the armor outside, get out, and then go through it again slowly. And that's just really irritating. So I'm hoping somebody will suggest a fix, or it's like, oh, you can totally once you get to level 37, you can just craft your own fusion cores. And be like, that'll be great.
Codes.
But
yeah, I'll play it pretty soon. I think my biggest frustration so far has been lack of 21:9 support natively. Of course, someone already made a fix for that, but this is a PC game. Come on, it should have 21. Well, it's a console game thrown on PC. I don't know what it is. And then just general lack of options, lack of an FOV slider. Thankfully, on the Nexus, the Fallout 4 Nexus or whatever, there's already a fix for that. Someone made a configuration tool where you can disable mouse acceleration, disable gamepad support, change your FOV, set a manual resolution. It can be anything you want. You can pick arbitrary numbers. I set mine to 2600 by 1300 because I like the 1:2 ratio. It's kind of cool. Play it in the middle of the screen.
I did the IFS clamp change. Because it seems that the render speed, the frame rate is linked to the engine render speed. Bethesda, console-itis, whatever, I don't know. And I did the IFS clamp change. I've also made a number of changes to the INI that's just standard Bethesda fodder. I don't know that it's really anything that people don't already know, but it's just like, I find that it's, there's Bethesda games with mods. And I find that what I really want is Bethesda games with mods, not Bethesda games.
Yeah, I used to be the biggest Bethesda fan on the planet, and I played through. But that was back in the early days of Elder Scrolls, like Daggerfall and Morrowind. I was just like,
when they actually took time and effort and built their games appropriately.
I would think that they take time and effort now, but they direct them at a different audience than they used to. They've gone big, and they want to do mainstream, and they want to make sure that everyone's involved. So they have to. There's a dumbing down a little bit, not much. They're still pretty quirky and interesting, but the interfaces and the general experience is what's been really dumbed down the most. And I think the reason they do it is that I feel like they know what they're doing, and they're like, listen. The people that we need to dumb this down for are not going to know how to mod this game, or are not going to know, or not even going to care about modding this game. But we want to make sure it's accessible to them. And then the modders will fix it for all the PC gamers and smart people, or people who desire more. It'll be fixed by the mod community, and that's fine. We totally support that. You guys can make a new UI. You guys can make plugins. You guys can do, read. I've already got like an EMB running or whatever. It looks better now, but they're going to let the PC people fix it themselves. They're going to do it. They're doing their job, so.
Yeah.
Oh, well, whatever. Anyway,
kids.
On something else, there was a whole bunch of stuff going back and forth. This is just a thing on Reddit real quick. About, FOV. Somewhere the news came out that there was going to be no FOV slider in the new Deus Ex, and right here they just posted, yes, there will be an FOV slider, but I think it's ridiculous on PC that we have to have. It's an FPS game. All FPS games should have FOV sliders. We shouldn't even have to have this conversation. It should be default on all PC games.
I remember back in the day when I had a 17-inch 4x3 CRT monitor. It was from Gateway. It was a Trinitron. It was really nice. I used to play Quake at 140 FOV on a 4x3 monitor. And everybody always claimed that I was cheating because I could see behind my head. It was amazing.
Except it was hard to aim.
No, I was damn good at it. I was really good at it. I just stick my head really close. I'd stop blinking, and everything is like right there. And I was so good because you'd walk up to a wall where normally you'd be like, oh, I can only see here. And suddenly I can see around the corner because my camera is right there. And I was like, oh, you're coming. Bam, bam, bam. And you get used to the person like in that fisheye lens where it looks like they're way out here, but then they're way out here. It's 140. I eventually, even with Quake Live nowadays, I put it up to about, I crank it all the way to max. I'm like, it's not far enough. I need it. And you get a 21:9 monitor, I want to make that even wider. That's just what it boils down to. I want to make that wider. I want to make a wider FOV on that.
150.
But I also wanted to not take into I wanted to take into consideration that I want this field of view to extend not necessarily this way. Because like you get into like Elite Dangerous and you crank up the FOV on that and you can tweak it, but you end up doing it this way. So even if you've got 3 monitors side by side, it stretches this way and then this way. So suddenly you're looking at the lower part of the cockpit and the upper part of the cockpit, and you can't actually. It's terrible. Anyway,
very specialized
FOV
case,
sliders must.
Okay, how about some drama? And we'll end on this. Take 2. They're sending private investigators to some modders' homes to knock on the doors and tell them to stop making certain mods for GTA 5.
I want to really get down to the nitty-gritty before everybody goes, what the... Because that was my first thing when I read the title.
Right.
It was very specific modders for GTA 5, and those specific mods enabled piracy capabilities to allowed
That's
for
not the goal
pirate
of them,
versions
really. I mean,
of the game to be played.
Yeah, the thing really is that they're allowing them to have an alternate version of the online experience that's not supported by Rockstar. Therefore, it's not checking your serial number to make sure you have a legit copy or whatever. That's how they're saying this is enabling people who pirate the game to play online. So,
but it's like I said, it's not just all modders. That was the motive from Take-Two. And the modders who were like, they took down their mod, they said, we totally get it. And they could have just thrown the legal system at us, but instead they're like, knock, knock, hey guys.
right. Why would they send a private investigator to their homes?
As
that seems a
opposed
bit
to
weird.
filing a lawsuit against them?
Well, that's
Yeah,
nice.
how
Why
else-
couldn't they send him a letter or give him a call or something? I don't know.
Well, the one guy
Somebody
said
knocking on the door.
The
That's
one
weird.
guy said, well, I think that was the whole point, is they wanted to make sure that they got into that conversation. The one guy said that he answered his door and it was a couple of PIs and they handed him a phone and he answered the phone. He's like, hello, and he's like, hi, we're from Take-Two. You need to take your mod down. This is why. Blah da 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 da. Thank you for your time. Hands it back and those guys leave. And I'm like, this almost feels like a Syndicate Plus kind of thing or anything along those dystopian future where it's no longer police. It's not even rent-a-cops. You're just straight up, these are agents of the company who are coming to you. These are
very
Shadowrunner
Syndicate.
kind of guys. Very Syndicate kind of stuff. Like, what's going on?
So, I mean, what if these guys, they don't even know why they're going there? They just know, find out who this is, find out where he lives, and take the phone to him.
But the other thing is that you look at these modding companies, these modding communities, is sometimes the people who are making these mods are pseudo-anonymous. So in order to find them, instead of just again blasting them with whatnot, they hired a couple of PIs to go find the guys and give them a phone. I mean, I think it's bloody creepy, but I think it's better than the headline being GTA 5 modders lawsuit filed or were arrested for this conversation would be very different in that case.
Right.
I don't.
And again, it's not all mods. It's specifically the couple of mods that were allowing you to have different multiplayer experiences that weren't connecting to the Rockstar servers and all that.
And that enabled you to run a pirated version of the game.
So I'm not sure if I see too much issue with this, other than it's a bit strange.
Like I
but
said,
people need to not. People are freaking out, though. If you look around on the internet, people are freaking out. So
well, it's the creepy factor of, wait a minute, how do they know where you lived? Oh my god, well, they're PIs. These guys make their living off of hunting people down. They're creepy and they're scary. This is why they, there's very few of them and they're creepy and scary.
Yep.
They operate outside the law.
So that's pretty much the episode. I'm going to give you guys a couple of updates now. This is like the credits are rolling right now, but this is going to be this is after the show type stuff. So just let you know what's going on. Qain's here. We got to look for a new place really soon. We're going to China as well in the next couple of weeks. So it's going to be kind of hectic. Expect the content to keep getting better and all that sort of thing. The Patreon money, some of it came in this week. So finally came in. It's just got into the account like a day ago. It had to go through PayPal. Then that takes a couple more days. But finally, so you guys are going to start seeing some changes soon. Don't expect overnight changes. Like some people are like, and also, guys, I will eat whatever I damn well please. I don't need people commenting on when I eat like a sandwich, like, oh, you're wasting our Patreon money. No, I'm not. I have my own. I get paid, guys, and that's what I use for when I'm eating a sandwich.
I want to just touch on that briefly, as brief as I can possibly be. The whole point of the Patreon money is to allow us to continue operating and give us the ability to use that money for our normal everyday
better food for me
and me
and
I need
beer,
to eat, so we can eat and not have to worry about what we're eating from, and we can roll that money back into better content. It's all going to happen.
I'm not going to disclose what I get paid, but what I get paid is not going to change. And the money, Jennifer's got an MBA.
He's buying me a
Lamborghinis. And then we're going to race Linus and his team and their Lamborghini.
After we propose the vending machine to the Lamborghini Maserati.
Ours is a crowd-funded Lamborghini versus the YouTube Cash Money Lamborghini. Come on.
No, but bottom line, seriously, is that it is all going to good use, and it is getting rolled into bigger, better, stronger, faster. You're going to see more cooler,
eventually.
And more awesome stuff.
You forget that. Eventually.
Well, no, eventually. No, it is. And also, thank you.
Yeah. I guess I should bring up the Patreon thing there so we could at least just see it on the screen. There we go. Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. So anyway, thanks for your patience and all that sort of thing. I'm expecting some. I mean, after the end of the year, we'll have a new place because we have to be out of here. This was a temp spot, like very temporary rental. So as soon as we get out of here, we'll be in something a little bit more permanent. But we've been in flux for far too long, and I think that the reason we've been in flux is because I've refused to sell out on many different occasions.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, with your support out there, we'll finally be able to stop being in flux all the time and actually get down and get to work instead of having to jerk around with so much nonsense and trying to figure out, you know, how to just get things done at home and like all the. It's been stressful, so this is helping so much. Removing this layer of stress is unbelievable, and I think it's going to really help transform what we can do here. So, yeah, guys, I'm going to get all teary and all that stuff. You guys are awesome. That's pretty much it. We'll see you guys in the comments on the website.